Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good day and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here on this Monday the 5th of August, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. Conditions have to be just right for a storm to form. Last evening they were here in Nova Scotia, right where I live. And I was watching it approaching on radar. It was a extremely bad thunderstorms. They had 2-inch hail, or 1.5-inch size hail. Well, they were saying 2-centimeter hail, which is about, I guess, 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, something like that. And strong winds and lightning. The storm came up and it was going to hit me, and I was watching it on radar, heading right for me, this big red blob. And it kind of divided in two. And went off about 5 miles to my east and 5 miles to my west and kind of split. And I kind of went down the middle of it. I didn't get the worst of it. The worst of it was on either side of me last night. But the conditions were right to develop. And that's what I'm pointing out is the conditions in the world are ripe for an awful lot of these things to develop that are happening right here. I'm going to be pointing them out to you. But first, we're going to take a look at what this hurricane is doing. We got another hurricane. We had one hit Texas already so far this season. And this season's very early yet. And so we got another one hitting Florida right now, hitting the panhandle of Florida. And it's going to cross the state. It's looks like it's going to exit back into the ocean up around Savannah someplace. Savannah, Georgia. And it's going to head out over the Carolinas, out to sea again, gather some strength again, and then come in around North and South Carolina for a second landfall. Of course, obviously, this thing is going to dump copious amounts of water. I don't think wind's going to be the big problem. I think the water is going to be the big problem. It's torrential rain's going to come from this thing. So we got that to go on for the next day or two. It looks like it's going to hang around until about Thursday. So it's going to be all the early part of this week. Now, here's one of the things I'm talking about. If conditions are right, if you can get conditions right for a thunderstorm like I had last night, you can also get conditions right in the world. If conditions are right, these protests and stuff can form just like thunderheads form or storms form in the mid-afternoon if the conditions are right. And not just in one country, but in multiple countries. Now, Bangladesh, I told you guys, been watching what's happened in Bangladesh. This is what can happen, and I told you guys about this. That they can actually force government right out if enough people revolt, and it gets too overwhelmingly large for the government. They resign and flee. It says Bangladesh Prime Minister has resigned and flees the country. And there they are standing on the desk waving the flag. The protesters. Right, it says a massive crowd of protesters overtook the former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's office residence in the capital of Dhaka on Monday. And they're right in there. They've overtook his office and everything, his desk and everything else. So ultimately, we all know, and they know. I mean, this is the worst nightmare in politics for any leader, world leaders or whatever. They know that if the people revolt enough in power, that this can happen. It's happened many times before in world history. And it's happened again right here in Bangladesh. The prime ministers fled the country. Well, there you go. That's what's going on there. Now, what's happening in the United Kingdom? The United Kingdom's prime minister talks of a standing army of police to deal with the riots across Britain. So, for the people, the world leaders and everything else, the people in charge and stuff, their main line of defense is these standing armies of police or whatever. The conditions seem to be forming a certain way. If I was a weather forecaster and I was sitting here watching all this, from my weather office and stuff, I'd say, well, the conditions are right for thunderstorms to form this afternoon worldwide. Well, it's like the conditions are right for... It's like there could be a million reasons why the people revolt. But what's the underlying reason? What's the underlying disease? The economy. Are the people fat and happy? Are they making money? Are they enjoying their lives? Or are they dealing with things like inflation that's turning them into destroying their lives and making them unhappy? Because to get the conditions right for these thunderstorms to develop, and I'm not really talking about thunderstorms, I'm talking about riots and whatever, riots and protests and all this kind of stuff. For the conditions to be right for these things to develop, it has to be similar to what a thunderstorm would be for the development of a thunderstorm. If for a weather forecaster, there's no problem forecasting it. For me, it's no problem forecasting this because I'm watching the economy turn millions and millions of people worldwide into poverty and make them very unhappy. Unhappy people, and when they get down to the point where they're having a hard time feeding themselves, this is a no-brainer forecast, and there's going to be thunderstorms. Or there's going to be protests. It's the same thing. To me, it's the same idea. It's the same concept. So basically, it's like forecasting the weather, kind of similarly. Now taking a look here in China, they are trying to switch over to consumption right now, and they've been trying to do this for a while now. Their economy is faltering. The GDP's come down. They still have very good GDP numbers, but it has come down, and so they're not gonna. They're being kind of preemptive here, and they're trying to get ahead of this thing before it takes their economy out. Now, what are we doing here in the United States? Absolutely nothing. The Fed is making all of the wrong decisions. Now, I don't know how China's going to fare. Maybe they'll fare better with their new high-quality debt of service consumption. Maybe they'll fare better. But at least they're doing something about it to try to improve things for their economy. Here we're making all the wrong decisions with the Fed. It was the wrong decision all the way across the board, and I said it was early in my show when they started to tighten. They're tightening into weakness. What they needed to do is we're heading toward a hyperinflation. And if they could get escape velocity, if they could get the economy going to a certain point, well, it's no use crying over spilt milk now, because they've already done the damage. But if they could have, back around when our economy was bustling, after they injected all that money into the economy, if they could have hit escape velocity with the economy and really got the economy ticking along and entered into this hyperinflation, it would have been a totally different story than trying to enter into a hyperinflation with a weak, staggering economy, which is what they got now. Economy that's heading toward a recession. That's not the way to do it. If you want maximum disaster, though, that's the way to do it. Now, what's happening with the war over there? And, well, there's more than one war to talk about, but I'm talking about the war that's going on where Iran is they're waiting right now with bated breath whether Iran is going to strike Israel. And we see this Hezbollah has launched these rocket barrages in northern Israel, around Upper Galilee, right now. I'll tell you what I think's going on. The defense shield that Israel has over it, called the Iron Dome or whatever, has to be reloaded. So basically, I guess they got these rocket tubes or whatever. They slide the rockets in the rocket tubes, and then when the rockets come in from Hezbollah or whatever, the bad guy rockets, they fire the rockets that they have loaded into the Iron Dome system, and those rockets go up and intercept. But then they got an empty tube. The rocket they had in the tubes went up. It stopped the rocket that was coming in from Hezbollah. But now they got an empty tube. Now, how many times can they reload before they don't have anything to reload with? And those missiles are extremely expensive. And so I see Hezbollah launching these rocket barrages at them. I say to myself, gee, you know what they're trying to do, I think? This is just my opinion and my take on it. I think they're trying to soften them up, empty the tubes of their defense systems with a bunch of small rockets coming in from Hezbollah. And then later, if those tubes are empty and they've knocked a hole or they've punched a hole in the defense system, then they can. That's what I think they're trying to do. That's what I think's going on here. Now, that's just my opinion. Probably getting ready for a big attack's going to come with thousands of rockets or hundreds of rockets. They're probably softening them up. That's what I think they're doing. I couldn't, you never know for sure what's really going on. Now, the United States intelligence community is saying that Russia is advising the Houthis inside Yemen. So right inside Yemen. Now, if they're advising them, what's to stop them? That's my question now I'm asking. What's to stop them from arming them as well and telling them how to use them? Now, see, the Russians the United States has armed Ukraine and told them how to use them. So what's stopping them? The question is, what's stopping Russia from arming the Houthis and telling them how to use them? Question I got, and which one can do the most damage these weapons that they give them, if they give them, like the United States gives Ukraine a weapon system, basically it's just point and push the red button. Everything else is done for them. They bring it in, they ship it over there, they land it where it's supposed to be, and they set it up and everything else, and then they all they have to do, the final thing is to push the red button, and the whole weapon system does it all itself. And the weapon systems they might give the Houthis might be the same sort of deal, that they just have to push the button. Of course, let's just theoretically talk about this for a minute more. What if the Houthis were to launch some Russian-made missile that they just have to push the red button? It's very similar to, it's like a tit-for-tat sort of thing. It could be, In other words, you arm Ukraine, we'll arm Cuba, we'll arm Yemen, we'll arm. I'm just, thinking here, thinking on the fly what they could do. I'll tell you one thing right now, guys. If I can get rid of this stupid ad, it's froze up my whole page somehow. I just want to get the price for silver. Why are you doing these stupid ads? It says the page is not responding. Silver price today is not responding. I'll have to come back to it in a minute. Let's check our price for Bitcoin. Do you know the price for Bitcoin just I think it was about an hour ago I looked and it was like 50,000. Now it's 55,000. Everything kind of turned a little bit. Like the markets were over 1,000 points down. They're like 1,080 or something down, and then all of a sudden they turned, and the markets have shifted. They're only 759 points down, and I noticed the bond market It was down like 10 basis points, and now it's up like 2 basis points. Everything just went ping, ping. You know, there's our silver price, $27.27 today. It's down $1.28. Everything changed direction there. Could be the plunge protection team. Something's going on. I'm telling you, these markets are all so manipulated, you know, and I think this is worrying them at this point. Now I think they're getting worried. The Fed's getting worried. Finally. And when they worry about their baby, which is the economy, it's what supports them, then they'll come in and they'll do something. And what'll they do? There's only one thing they can do, is create more cheap, easy money for nothing. So we're looking at 27.27 on silver today. Bitcoin's at 55,051. Ethereum's at 2,485. And XRP is at 49 cents. So it's 50-cent coin. Well, you know, everything's taken a little bit of a beating. Is this the end? Is this the end right now of this downward move in the markets? Should you buy the dip right now? You know, and I mean, that's what's happening right now. A lot of people are buying the dip. The market right now, the Dow Jones is at 38,978. It's down 759 points. A lot of people are buying the dip right now, but I'm going to tell you guys what, I'm not so sure about that. I tend to think that in this, I want to wait and see more. I want to see over the next week or so. I have a much better handle on this situation that's happening right now. This is very fluid. It's happening very fast, you know. And we've got a market that's, look, it's only come down from here to here, guys. Just from here to here. You know, people are acting like it went from here to down to the floor, you know. It hasn't. It's only just come down that little nib. That's it. Bonds and rates today. We're looking at a 10-year, the 3.8. Now that's a massive move to the downside, because we were like 4.5. You know, the 3.8 in the U.S. 10-year. That's a big drop. U.S. 30-year is 4.1. And we've seen these bonds fall the last little bit, especially on the long end. Now, taking a look at our dollar today is at 102.75. So the dollar's lost a fair little piece, because it was up around 104. Now it's 102.75. Very interesting. I've been waiting for this for a long time. I'm not absolutely sure right now, certain that this is it. This is the turner for the Fed. It's really going to turn them, make them go in the opposite direction. But I do know that if this isn't it, it's coming. This is going to happen. This has to happen. They just can't keep rates high like they've kept them, and banks not lending money around the country, and not have a downturn. Because that's the biggest thing that adds what you call money to the economy and keeps the wheels spinning. See, it's like a big machine, you know. And you got to grease a big machine or oil it. And if you don't do that, if you're stingy with the oil, the machine will seize up. It'll break down and seize up, because it doesn't have any lubricant. And what's the lubricant for the economy? Is what we call money. Federal Reserve notes floating around in the system. That's the lubricant. And the Fed, in all their omnipotence, of course I'm being very sarcastic about that, they've decided to remove the lubricant from the system, or remove the lubricant from the engine. And right now what's happening is the engine's starting to you hear noises. The engine's starting to knock. It's starting to, you know. And yes, this should be a big concern for them. And yes, just like an engine, the economy can actually seize up. It almost did back in 2008. It's very difficult. That sort of a seize up is like it happens. It can happen very suddenly within the economy. You know, it's basically a traveling. It's like a traveling disease of bankruptcy that goes through the system, and everybody starts to go bankrupt because they're all interconnected. All these banks and all these derivatives products are all interconnected. And so when a big player goes down, a really big player, he carries all the other players that are connected to him down, and then everybody else is connected to them too, and they all start to fall. It's like somebody in the financial system a few years back come up with an idea. Picture a bunch of ships on the ocean, you know. And one of the captains comes up with an idea. You know, they're all floating there on the ocean, about 100 ships. One of the captains comes up with an idea. He says, we got chains. We'll chain all the ships together. Tie chains to our decks. And that way, if one of us starts to sink, well, all the other ships will hold him up. You know, and keep him from sinking. The chains will keep him from sinking. Sounds like a great idea. So that's what all the banks have done. They've all put these chains from one bank to the next bank, these derivatives products as chains, so that if one starts to sink, the others can hold them up, and they do these mergers and stuff. So if a bank starts to sink, they merge with another bank, and these are like the chains that hold the system up. The problem with all this is if they get too many sink at once, it'll carry the whole fleet down. And this can happen at electronic speed within the system. And so you remove the engine oil from the engine. And don't oil it. Don't put any lubricant in it. And it starts to knock and everything else. And smoke's starting to come out of the engine. Yes, it's still running. This is the way with our financial system. But it could lock up. The whole thing could just... A meltdown is what they could have if they're not careful with this thing. So they have to keep injecting this liquidity. But if they keep injecting the liquidity, inflation's going to continue to rise. And they're losing the battle now. And so what we're going to see is the unrest that I was talking about is a direct product of the inflation. When people get hit with the massive inflation and they're unhappy and they're having trouble feeding themselves, then a myriad of other problems can prop up that they can find wrong. And they blame it on the other problems, right? Whether it's social problems or whatever, they blame it on that. They say, well, that's what the riots are about. Well, what are they really about? They're really about the economic problems that are tightening and affecting these people in a very adverse way. But they don't, that's not what they say it's about, because they find any other problem to associate by association, any other thing to gripe about, so that they can have their big riot. You know, but the underlying problem that's causing it all, that's feeding all of this, is the monetary system. Excuse me. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and you guys have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.